there, welcome to Ridge Church. We're so glad that you're here with us, whether you're tuning in from right here in Charlotte, North Carolina, or from anywhere else. At Ridge Church, we know that life is messy, and we hope the message you're about to hear encourages you, challenges you, and reminds you that you're never alone. Thanks for listening in.
So one of the things that we know as humans, it doesn't matter your age or stage of life, is that fear is a part of it. Anxieties, like I've talked about this a couple times in the last few series, that our current generation is dubbed as the anxious generation. And so we know this, like sometimes it's fear of the future, like what does the future hold? It's fear of what's going to happen with our health. It's fear within relationships. Sometimes it's fear of what happened in the past or not dealing with what happened in the past. It gets dragged into our future. Sometimes it's anxiety or fear of fear itself. And so we want to spend a few weeks just trying to unlock some of that in a way that will be helpful, taking a look at God's word and journeying together in that. So I think you picked a great time to be here. Again, there's not a human on the planet doesn't wrestle with this in some way, shape, or form, probably in an ongoing fashion. So we're going to spend a little bit of time for the next 3 weeks talking about that. And today, in just a moment, you're going to hear from Kevin. Kevin is a friend of mine that I want to tell you a little bit of his story. So his day job is he's a vice president where he actually coaches sales leaders. He equips them. He's a leader of leaders, so he does leadership seminars. And then on the side, because he wasn't busy enough with his full-time job, he has a ministry that has started a nonprofit where they put on weekend camps and summer camps and winter camps, those kind of things for teenagers. And then on top of that, because he wasn't busy enough, he is a dad and he's a granddad. And then also he volunteers in our student ministry. So the next time you're thinking, I just think I'm a little bit too busy to volunteer, I just want you to think about Kevin, right? Because Kevin's making it happen. But I'm so grateful that he's stepping in today and is going to speak. He's a great communicator. You guys are going to appreciate him.
We all have fears, just so you guys know, and I'm going to share a couple of mine with you, and then we're going to go around the room and have you guys share yours. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that, but my wife recently, we celebrated a big birthday for her, and typically we do birthdays pretty big, but this one was a big one, so we really wanted to celebrate it big. And so my kids came to me and they said, Dad, hey, to help celebrate my wife this year, or your wife this year, our mom, we think we should get her something, an experience this year that she's never been able to do, something she's always wanted to do, but something she's never been able to do in the past. And that was skydive. She's always talked about wanting to go skydiving. She's always wanted to jump out of an airplane. She's talked about it all the time. She's just never had the opportunity to do it. And so she said, let's get her that this year. And I thought, that's a great idea. And so I told my daughter, I said, go research, go find the place to go do it, and then go, reserve the opportunity. We'll go there with her. We'll celebrate her. We'll watch her come down. This will be fun. This will be great. She'll love it. This is a great idea. Yeah, go do it. So my daughter went out and found a great place to go to do it, not too far from here, and set up the reservation. But unfortunately for me, she didn't just make one reservation. She made multiple reservations, including one for myself. And just so you know, while this is something my wife's always wanted to do, this is something I've never wanted to do, okay? For two main reasons. Is I got a couple of big hangups. Two of them are I like to be in control, okay? And number two is I don't like heights. And I don't know if you know a whole lot about skydiving, but that kind of checks both of those boxes, okay? And so this wasn't something I wanted to do, and I pushed back immediately. But my daughter's like, no, Dad, Mom's going to want to do this with you. She's going to want to share this experience with you. And secretly, I don't think she wants to do that, okay? I don't think she really wanted to celebrate it with me. I think my daughter was just inside laughing and thinking this is going to be a fun time. But either way, I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it for my wife. I love her, whatever, I'll do it for her. And so the whole time I'm thinking I'm just going to do this for her. And we show up to go do the skydiving on the particular day. And as you walk up, we're trying to get you have to sign a waiver. First of all, it's not just a paragraph waiver. It's like a book, okay? It's like a contract you're signing. And I'm pretty sure the words in there said you're going to die and you're okay with that, okay? And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, are you reading this? And they're like, why are you reading it, Dad? Just sign it. And I was like, that's the first problem. But either way, I get past this, and I sign it, and we're kind of getting like hooked up. They're like fitting you with a harness, and to kind of get you all sized up and everything. And I'm nervous. This is not my thing. I'm not excited about this at all. And so I'm trying to basically do what I do to calm myself down. And I just start talking to the guy that's like fitting me up. And I just start having a conversation with him because I'm just trying to calm myself down. Unfortunately for me, I wasn't having the typical conversation where I'm interested in you and I'm talking about you and I'm paying attention to what you're saying. I'm just asking questions because I'm literally just trying to calm my brain down. And so I'm just asking one question after another. How long have you been doing this? And he's like, been doing it for about 11 years now. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a long time. How long have how many jumps have you had? And he says the jumps. And then I was like, wow, you've been doing it for that's a lot of jumps. And then not paying attention, I accidentally asked, so has anything gone wrong? And the minute I asked it, the minute I heard the words come out of my mouth, I regretted asking that. And I kind of could tell from his smile on his face that he really wanted to tell me, but like I just didn't really. And he's like, do you really want to know the answer to that question? And I was like, you got to tell me now. Like, you can't not say it, right? You got to at least answer the question. And he's like, yeah, there's things that go wrong. He's like, but we have safeguards in place. And I was like, I'm going to need a little more than that. Okay, I'm going to need you to explain what that means, okay? Because now I'm going through my head trying to figure out all those things, and do you really have safeguards in place? And I was like, give me an example of something that go wrong. He's like, well, occasionally your parachute won't open. I was like, that's a pretty bad wrong. I just want to be clear. That's a bad one right there. I'm glad we're starting up here, right? He's like, yeah, he said, occasionally it won't open. I was like, that seems like a pretty big deal. Like, do you like chase after somebody whose is open at that point and you try to latch onto them? Like, I'm trying to figure out what's my plan here. And he's like, no. He said, we all carry a backup parachute. And I was like, well, what if that one doesn't open? He's like, it always opens. And I was like, hey, I'm a process guy. I can fix this for you. Let's just go with the one that always opens. Let's just go with that one. And he's like, no, it doesn't work that way. He said, the reason why they don't open, he said, because we have to, as many jumps as we do, the way we pack them is we kind of like just shove them in pretty quickly. And I look over and there's a little guy on the ground and he's got one between his legs and he's just doing this, shoving it into a backpack, the way I pack up my sleeping bag after I'm camping. And I was thinking, wow, that's weird, you know? And he's like, yeah, we just shove them like that because of the amount of jumps we do. And I was like, well, then if that's the way you do it, then how does the other one always open? And he said, it takes 4 hours to fold a backup parachute, a reserve parachute. He said, you have to fold it exactly right so that every single time you pull it, you know it's going to open. He said, the strings don't get tangled. It always inflates every single time. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, well, I just want to be clear. How many times has yours not opened? And he said, well, the average is about 1 in every 1,000 times. And I was like, okay. And I was like, how many times has yours not opened? And he said, I hit that average. He said, mine's not opened about 7 times. He said, he's done about 7,000 jumps. I was like, oh, okay, no big deal. And it is a big deal, to be clear, but I'm just trying to like get this through my head. So we're in the plane. We're up in this tiny little plane, and I'm staring at this door that's about to open. And the good news is the first time you jump, you're not on your own. Okay, you're just basically strapped to some perfect stranger, okay? Some guy that they say is certified, some guy that they say has been trained, okay? But you're strapped to them. And I'm just sitting in this plane, and I'm looking at this door that's about to come open. And so I'm strapped to some guy. My wife's strapped to this perfect specimen of a man. I mean, just to be clear. I mean, he is like 6 foot tall, beautiful head of hair, like just gorgeous. And she's just loving every minute of it. She's just smiling from ear to ear. They're talking it up. They're chatting it up. My guy's like behind me, and he's just like, he's not saying a whole lot because I think he's kind of sensing the tension. Like he's realizing this isn't my thing. And so he's not saying a whole lot other than he's like, hey, listen, when we go out the door, we're not going to be able to talk. He's like, the wind's going to be going so fast that you're not going to be able to hear me. He's like, so just recognize, he's like, when the time the parachute opens, he said, I'm going to tap you on the shoulder. He said, because sometimes it can be a little bit of a jerk. I want you to be ready for it. He's like, just tap on the shoulder. He said, but just relax. Everything's going to be okay. He said, just relax. I've got everything under control. And for a guy that likes to be in control, that's not very helpful, okay? But either way, I was like, okay, I just need to pay attention to the tap. That's what I'm going to pay attention to. I'm going to pay attention to the tap. So we go out the door of the plane. And I immediately regret my decision. Immediately, like I am going towards the ground. I don't know if you've ever skydived, but that's what it looks like. You're falling, and you're falling for a very long time. And I'm struggling. Like I'm like literally going, this is crazy. Why did I do this? And immediately I'm going through my head, like this guy, did I get attached to the right guy? Like, is this even is this like a guy, or is he just somebody like me? And we accidentally got hooked up to each other. Like, does he have the parachute, or was I supposed to grab it? Like, what's going on here? Okay, maybe he is the guy, but did he really get trained? Is he certified? Does he know what he's doing? Or is he a roundup kind of guy? Like, it's okay, he's average, C's get degrees kind of guy? Or is he actually like he paid attention during the class? Is he mad? Is he angry? Did he get in a fight with his wife this morning? And this is time he's just going to check out. And now I'm going to just fall to the ground with this guy now because he's done with his life. And this is it. And this is what's going through my head the entire time while we're just plummeting straight towards the cow pasture. Okay? Like I can see it coming up very quickly because we were falling for a very long time. So long that I'm like, dude, something's wrong. And then all of a sudden I get the tap on the shoulder. I was like, oh, whew, good. He is the right guy, okay? And he remembers he's got the parachute and he's going to pull the parachute. Parachute didn't open. No parachute whatsoever. None. I'm the guy. I'm the 1 in 1,000 guy that the parachute doesn't open. But that's okay. That's okay. Because the guy said everybody carries a backup parachute. And so I'm thinking, does he remember he's got a backup parachute? Like, does he know? Maybe he needs help. Maybe he can't find it. So I'm like reaching behind, trying to help him find it. And he pushes my arms back down like this, back against me. And then he taps me on the shoulder again. And he's like, and so I'm thinking, oh, good. He found the backup parachute. Here it comes. No backup parachute. None whatsoever. And now I'm thinking, I'm the one guy that it doesn't open. Now I'm trying to figure out, what do you mean by guarantee? Does it mean that I'm going to get my life back? Is that what he means by guaranteed to open? I'm the one guy that it doesn't open? And I'm freaking out at this point. I'm like, this is crazy. This is absolutely nuts. Like, why is it that now I have the one parachute that the backup parachute doesn't open? I'm going to be the guy they all talk about. We carry 3 parachutes from now on. Because of the bald-headed, bearded guy that I'm going to be that guy now. And I'm freaking out. Now, I realize this next thing makes no logic sense whatsoever, but keep in mind, in my head, we just went through one parachute, then we went through the backup parachute. But now I get another tap on the shoulder. And he reaches around and gives me a thumbs up. Now, I realize that this doesn't make any logic sense, okay? I realize that. But in my head, it's been good knowing you, but we're all out of parachutes. Enjoy the ride down. And that was it. I was like, okay, this is it. I'm about to die with this perfect stranger on my back. Babe, I hope you enjoy your birthday. Get to know the guy that you're strapped to because I'm done, right? And the entire time, I'm just headed straight to the ground. And I'm thinking, this is it. God, this was a stupid decision. I knew it was, but I'm about to talk to you about it face to face. We're going to talk it through, and we're going to work it out. And that's it. I'm done. And I'm thinking, I'm about to die with this perfect stranger. I didn't even have a real conversation with the guy. I'm thinking, is he even a Christian? Like, should I have been spending my time talking to him about you? And then all of a sudden, he like taps me on the shoulder and thinking, oh, he is a Christian. Oh, he is good. He is a Christian. But no, that's not what it meant. Then all of a sudden, the parachute opens. And all of a sudden, relief hits. I'm like, oh, wait, that's crazy. That's awesome. That's great. We say you found a parachute. And now we can talk because we're just kind of floating. And he asked me, say, hey, man, you good? And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. You found another parachute. Where'd that come from? And he's like, I don't know if you realize the way this works, but we all carry a parachute. And I was like, I get that, but it didn't open. He's like, no, it opened. And I was like, no, you tapped me on the shoulder. It didn't open. He's like, no. He's like, you were freaking out a little bit. I just want to let you know everything was good. Everything's okay. And I was like, hey, man, I'm a communications guy. You didn't tell me anything about, there was no okay tap on the shoulder. There was the parachute's going to open tap. We need to work on our communication skills a little bit. We all have fears. We all have fears. We all struggle with fears. Clearly, we all struggle with fears. And while that's a funny story, I mean, sometimes fear shows up in different ways for different people. Sometimes fear shows up as paralyzing. Sometimes fear shows up as not being able to move forward, or sometimes fear causes us to do things that we don't want to do. And I'm excited to be able to talk to you guys about fear today because I think that there's some impact in trying to understand where this fear comes from and then taking a look at what God says about our fear. So if you guys will spend a few minutes with me, I'd like to try to unpack what fear is. And in the basic definition, fear is essentially an emotion. If you think about it, fear is an emotion, okay? But in addition to fear being an emotion, fear is also a feeling. Now, I don't know if you guys have thought about the difference between the two, but we have emotions and we have feelings, and sometimes we use these words as synonyms of each other. But the reality is they're different, okay? An emotion is basically, it's a basic instinct. There's only about 9 core emotions that we kind of deal with. And the idea of an emotion is it's designed to bring movement. It's designed to get you to move from one thing to another. You're driving down the road and you go to change lanes, and all of a sudden you see there's a car in that lane, and you're like, oh, and you swerve back, right? And then what happens is that fear of seeing that car all of a sudden kept you from kind of going into that lane. Fear, or any emotion, is designed to bring movement. You're standing there and your child does something, and all of a sudden a smile comes over your face. Is that emotion of joy, and it brings you closer to your child. Fear is designed to bring movement, and it's instinctual. You don't have a choice. It's instinctual, and it's based on a stimulus within the circumstances that you're in at the moment. It's designed within us. The key about an emotion is it's instinctual and it's fleeting. It leaves right away, okay? So once it brings movement to you, then all of a sudden it leaves. Now, the difference between an emotion and a feeling is a feeling sticks around. A feeling lasts a lot longer than a few moments. And the reason a feeling lasts a lot longer than a few moments is it'll start with emotion, but then we attach a belief to that emotion. We attach a belief to that emotion. And so fear is what I want to talk to you guys about is not the fear of the emotion today, but more fear the feeling today. Because fear is a feeling, and it's caused by a belief. It's caused by a belief that we attach to that. And it's a belief of potential future loss, of a loss that may come in the future. Not guaranteed, but its potential might come. We have this belief that this loss is going to happen. Now, I think this is important because I want you guys to recognize that, again, there's that emotion of fear that's instinctual. I don't think any of us have the ability to just walk through life and not have fear just kind of jump out at us. What I want to talk about, though, is what are we doing by taking that and turning it into that feeling of fear? Because that's the feeling that is trying to control us. There was a psychologist, Carl Albright, that took our fears and he mapped them. And he said all fears kind of fall within 5 different categories. And he took these and he broke them down into 5 different categories. And the first category that he says kind of is the basis of fear, he says is extinction death. Basically, it's this fear of death, right? This is where, I'll be honest with you, a lot of like fear of heights kind of comes from. Is this idea that we're going to die, or this potential we might die if we do this thing, right? And so that's where we all have this fear. It kind of trips me out that we have this fear because I don't know if you guys have checked the death statistic lately, but we're guaranteed 1 in 1 is going to die, right? Everybody dies at some point, but we still have this basic fear of death. I'm not really sure where it comes from, but we kind of have this fear of death, okay? But this is kind of where the fear of snakes comes from, is that fear of death, that when we get bitten, we don't really, there's a possibility we might die. And again, we're at the fear of height. But in addition to that, there's another one, and it's pain and suffering is the next bucket. Now, he doesn't actually call it pain and suffering. He calls it mutilation, okay? I renamed it pain because I didn't really want to put the word mutilation on the screen. I don't know why. I just didn't feel good about it. And so I renamed it. You like that? I'm like renaming a psychologist's categories. But essentially, that's what he's talking about, is this fear of pain. This idea that if I do this, there's a possibility I might run into some suffering or I might have some pain. I personally think this is where my fear of heights comes from. It's because it's not the dying thing. I'm okay with that, okay? It's the, what if I don't die? broken, everything's going to happen, right? And so there's a possibility that that's kind of where some of your fears are sitting. There's a possibility that you're worried about getting that diagnosis because of where that suffering might come from. There's the concern of if you end up doing something and then all of a sudden you have to figure out another way to operate because you're not operating in the same way, right? And so there's that fear of pain and suffering. The other category is autonomy control. This is the next category he talks about. And this is that idea that if you always have to be the one driving, or you always have to have your car at the place so that you can exit. Okay, there's that idea that if you don't have the ability to kind of be in control, that fear of being able to let go. This is where that fear kind of sits. A lot of times when I travel doing workshops, my wife will travel with me. And not too long ago, we were in Texas and we had a rental car. We always have a rental car, but I basically Ubered that day and showed back up at the hotel. And because she had the rental car the entire day to go see a friend. And then she was picking me back up and we were going to go grab dinner. And I walk out of the hotel to go get her, and she's sitting in the driver's seat. And the natural thing is for me to go get in the passenger seat. And I just walk around the car to the driver's seat and open the door. And she looks at me and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm just going to drive." And she was like, she just gets out. And then she gets on the passenger seat. And she's like, she said, "Guys always have to drive. What's that all about?" And I was like, "It's not guys, it's just me." Okay. I was like, I just have to be in control. Like, it's just one of those things that I struggle with. I just have to be in control. And that's kind of where it sits in, is being scared to give that up, is that fear of not being able to let that go. The next one is the separation relationship, is the idea that this is where that fear of being alone is. This is where that fear of not necessarily wanting to, maybe there's a possibility you need to have a conversation with somebody, but you're afraid of driving them away. And so you don't have that conversation. This is where you're worried about what's going to happen maybe when your kids get older and as they start kind of leaving the house, are they ever going to come back? And so you kind of hold on to them a little bit too long, right? You kind of like crowd them a little bit too much. This is where that fear kind of sits. And then the last one is this ego. And this is where that fear of being insignificant sits, or that fear of stepping out. This is where the fear of public speaking kind of sits, because we're afraid of humiliating ourselves. This is that fear that kind of keeps you maybe in a job a little bit too long because you're scared to try something new, or you're scared of being rejected. And so what ends up happening is wherever your fear sits, it sits in one of these categories. And I think it's important to try to look and see maybe where that category is. Because the idea about fear, this is the one thing about fear, is that fear is something that's seeking control of you. Regardless of what category your fear sits in, it's trying to control you. It's trying to control you. And the reality is I know your fear has caused a regret, because it's either kept you from doing something that you know you should have done, or it's caused you to do something that you wished you hadn't done. Whether that's staying in a job that's toxic, that you know you need to leave, but you're concerned about if you change what that's going to look like. Whether it's because you were afraid of what someone said about you and how it might affect the way they see you, you've lashed out at them, trying to push back, and now you regret the conversation that you had. The reality is all fears cause a regret, because you're not in control. You're letting your fear control you. And the interesting thing is that when Jesus was walking with the disciples, and this is one of the most common things Jesus talked about was fear. And it always interested me is how much time Jesus spent talking about fear, because I was so focused on the idea that fear was an emotion. I was like, it's instinctual. You built me this way. You designed me with the emotion of fear to protect me. And you're telling me to not have fear? And again, the reality is that's not the fear he was talking about. He was talking about the fear of the feeling that we attach a belief to. Throughout the New Testament, Jesus kept challenging the disciples over and over and over about their fear. And he would call out their fear. In Matthew, he says, do not be afraid. And in the same chapter, just a couple of verses down, he says again, do not be afraid. And then a few chapters later in Matthew, he says, do not be afraid. And I'm thinking, dude, Jesus, get a new script, okay? They're not hearing the same thing. And then in Luke, he says, don't be afraid. And again in Luke, he says, so don't be afraid. And then in chapter 8, he says, don't be afraid. And then again in Luke, he says, so don't be afraid. Over and over and over, he says, do not fear. But the cool thing about Jesus is he didn't just say, don't be afraid. See, the power in what Jesus was saying is in the ... It's the ... that helps us drive out fear. And if you look at, and we're not going to look at each of these today, and there's tons more of these. These are just the ones that I could fit on the screen. But I'm going to challenge you to go in and look and see those stories, because the reality is there's times when Jesus was, the disciples are in the middle of a storm, and Jesus looks at them and he says, hey, trust me. I know things are out of control, but trust me. And go look at those stories. But and it worked what Jesus did. It worked what Jesus said. Because one of his disciples, this guy named John, he actually referred to himself as the disciple whom Jesus loved. He actually wrote several letters, and one of his letters that he wrote was titled 1 John, highly creative. We need to get their creative team, whoever named that one. But he wrote one of the letters, 1 John, and he says in that, he says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. And I think this is important to recognize, because so many times when we talk about fear, we talk about trying to control fear. We talk about trying to keep fear at bay. We talk about trying to not let fear control me, because we know fear is trying to control us. And so we focus on control. But Jesus never, ever, ever talked about controlling fear. Instead, he talked about, hey, look at me and the amount of love that I have for you. And John says there's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. See, the reality is Jesus isn't asking you to control fear. He's saying, hey, use my love as a fear repellent. See, God's love is a fear repellent. When you understand God's love for you, the reality is it drives that fear completely out. It gets rid of that fear. I absolutely, from an early age of a Christian, I focused on that greatest commandment: love God and love people. Love God and love people. Love God and love people. And that's what I focused on so much. And I completely agree we should love God and love people. But I missed what gives us the ability to love God and love people. And that was understanding God's love for me. I completely skipped over that step. And by focusing on just, hey, I'm going to do, I completely skipped over that understanding God's love for me and allowing God to love me and recognizing what God's done for me and living in that. And when you do that, it allows that fear to drive out. There's several promises that you just grab hold of whenever you understand that love. And regardless of where your fear sits, whatever category it sits in, there's a promise that Jesus delivers and God holds true on. So maybe yours is about, am I worth it? Do I have dignity? Am I worried about making a mistake and letting that define me? Am I worried about what I've done in the past and the way people look at me? Well, for you, Jesus looks straight at you and he says, you matter. Hey, you matter to the one who matters. And it's not based on anything you've done or haven't done. It's based on who you are. You matter. If it's separation, if you're worried about being alone, or maybe you've been separated, somebody left, and you're dealing with this loneliness, this depression, Jesus looks and says, hey, I'm never going to leave. I know you may not know what the future looks like, and I know you may not know kind of who's going to be there. He's like, but I'm never going to leave. I'm always going to be with you. If it's the control, and it's this idea that you always have to be in control so that you can make sure that things are going, and you're worried about leaving a job that's toxic, and you're worried about you're not sure exactly how you should handle things. But you know that as long as you're the one in control, at least you can control that. Jesus is looking at you saying, hey, trust me. Because the reality is you're in much less control than you think you are. And so I just want you to trust me. Trust me. Trust me. And if it's pain and suffering where your fear is, and you're worried about walking into another diagnosis, or you're worried about what that pain's going to be like, Jesus is saying, hey, there's a purpose. But beyond that, there's not just a purpose. I know how much you can handle. I designed you. And I want you to know that I am completely in control. And if it's extinction death, if you're worried about that fear of death, I love this one. He looked straight at the disciples, and I can just imagine he had a little smile on his face, and he just said, hey, watch this. Hey, just watch this. And then he climbed up on the cross, and he defeated death to remove that fear of death off the table. Completely took it off the table. The interesting thing is, throughout the disciples and their journeys with Jesus, he constantly was calling this out in them. Constantly was calling out this them. Anytime he saw fear, anytime he saw the slightest significant fear, he would call it out. And then he would show them the promise as to why they did not need to fear. And it worked. Because this group of disciples took this early church and they just, this movement that Jesus created, and blew up the world. And they had, while they had multiple reasons to fear, they had multiple reasons to hold back, they did not allow that fear to control them. And they lived a life that looks like they had no fear. There was another guy that learned from the disciples, this guy named Paul. And Paul wrote a large part of the New Testament. And he looked at Jesus' life, and the disciples were able to help him try to understand what Jesus was talking about. And Paul wrote a letter in Romans, and in the entire first part of the chapter, he's talking about all the things that can destroy us, all those fears, that death, the humiliation, the loss of control, your livelihood going away, all these things that can destroy you. And then towards the end of it, he says, what then shall we say in response to these things? Should we shrink back? Should we hold back? And he says, no. He says, if God is for us, then who can be against us? Hey, if we've got God in our corner, if God's with us, the reality, there is nothing that any of these things can do to us. Said another way, if God is for me, there is no fear that can rule me. Bear with me for a minute, because most of the times when we talk about a life lesson, they happen years ago, right? That's what you're supposed to do. I'm going to tell you something that happened just a few months ago. I was asked to deliver this little small, wasn't even really a workshop. It was just kind of like a virtual call with a team. And this was one of those opportunities to where I wasn't super excited about it, because the reality is that the upside was very minimal, because I'd already done a ton of work for the team. They knew me, they were comfortable with me. I was already getting a ton of work from them. I wasn't going to get that much more work from them. But the downside was huge because if I stumble, if I mess up, then the entire team could stop using me, right? And so there was a lot of downside, very little upside opportunity for this. Not to mention the fact that it was virtual. I wasn't real excited about it. Not my primary thing. I prefer to be a little bit more on the live side. But the reason why the opportunity came to me was there was a new executive VP that was leading the team. And while her entire team was comfortable with me, they all knew me. And when she said she wanted to develop a session focused on performance management to help her leaders be able to lead their teams a little bit better, her entire team said, hey, get Kevin. Kevin can do this. Kevin will be great. We want Kevin. Well, she wasn't familiar with me because I'd never done any work with her. She didn't know me that well. She was new to the organization. And so she was like, okay, we'll get Kevin, but I don't really know Kevin. So I'm going to get Kevin to partner with these two other people to work with Kevin because I'm comfortable with them. And that way, at least I, kind of know it. And so number one, I was not excited about doing it to begin with. And then number two, being partnered up with two people that I don't typically work with, I was like, okay, whatever. And so I was like, okay, fine. But I kind of went into this thinking, maybe I'm going to take like a back seat to this. I'm going to try to not necessarily be a lead on it. Maybe I could just take a back seat, let them be a lead. I can kind of support. So we jump on a call to kind of brainstorm what we were going to do. The only direction I was given is, hey, we want to focus on how do we manage our teams better? How can we grow our performance and hold people accountable without demotivating them? And so we get on this call, and evidently they all had the same focus I did. Let's just take a back seat. Let's let Kevin lead. And so I'm sitting on the call realizing that my plan wasn't going to work. And so I just keep asking, hey, does anybody have any ideas? And none of them had ideas. And I was like, okay. And so I was like, I tell you what, we had about a week and a half to do it. I said, let's just kind of step back and each of us brainstorm on our own. We'll come back together next Friday on a call and we'll kind of hopefully develop a framework, but let's just kind of share ideas back and forth throughout the week. And so I got off the call, get on a plane the next week, heading out to a workshop on the West Coast. And I knew I needed to kind of build out some kind of framework for this. And so I sat down to kind of brainstorm, and the only time I was going to be able to work on this was on the plane because I know the way my brain works. After a workshop, I'm kind of worded out. I'm pretty much done. And so I couldn't wait till I got in the hotels at night. So I said, hey, these are 3 hours on a plane. I should be able to knock this out. But I wasn't excited about it. So I needed to get in the frame of mind. So I pull my laptop out and I sit down and I was like, okay, hey, God, and I start praying. I was like, hey, God, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what we should do with this, but hey, can you help give me the words, give me the structure to be able to put something together that will benefit the team and that they'll see value in what was delivered. And over the next 3 hours, you just banged out a beautiful framework for the way the call should go. It was just kind of coming out. I just like pulled it out. And as the plane's getting ready to land into San Francisco, heard the pilot come over the intercom. I'm like emailing it out to the two ladies that I was working with. I said, hey, this is just some brainstorming came up with. Let me know your thoughts. Open to any kind of changes you guys want to make. Emailed it out to them. And then I went through the whole week doing my workshops, expecting to kind of hear back from them, but heard nothing. Then we jump on a call that Friday and expecting to kind of see what was going on. And they get on the call and I was like, hey, I said, I emailed something to you guys. I'm open to ideas. Did you guys get a chance to look at it? And they're all like, yeah, we looked at it. We love it, Kevin. That's great. And one of them even said, hey, Kevin, I was on a call with the executive VP yesterday and I shared your stuff with her and I talked her through it, showed her, kind of walked her through your framework on what was going on and kind of what we put together and said, hey, listen, I think this is going to be great. What do you think about this? And she said, I just want to let you know, dude, she loved it. She loves what we built. And I'm thinking, we? And so I was like, okay. I was like, well, is there anything you guys want to add to it? And they're like, no, we love everything. Anything you want to take away? No, this is perfect. Just go with this. And I was like, okay. Does anybody want to put together a slide deck? And crickets. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. And so I get off the call, put the slide deck together and send it out to the team. And then an email comes out from the executive VP to the team saying, hey, very excited about, and it talked about the two ladies. And then I was kind of added in as a side note, have put together for you guys. And we're looking forward to the call tomorrow. And we get on, and I'll be honest with you, I saw that email and I was having a very hard time not being petty. You know what I mean? Like, I was having a very hard time not being petty about it. And then I'm not one of those guys that every single time I hear God's voice, but I feel very clearly this is one of those times where I heard God just clearly say, why are you upset about somebody taking credit for something I gave you? And it was just kind of like, convicting. And then all of a sudden I realized, you know what? It's not about the getting credit. I was worried about the fact of, are they going to see any kind of value that I bring? And do you see as that ego was getting affected? See, when we focus on fear, a lot of times we focus on the big fears, the crippling fears. But a lot of times fear shows up as pettiness, bitterness, frustration. I'm going to challenge you to take a look at your fears and not just look at the big ones, but look and see, hey, what are the fruits that are coming out? And maybe is that tied back to a fear? And what is that fear rooted in? Is it a belief in, if I do this, then I'll get this? Or is your belief based on God? Because Paul in that same chapter says this. He says, in all of these things, we're not here to survive. We're not here to deal. We're not here to control, but we're here to be conquerors through him who loved us. We are more than conquerors. And if we can focus on the love that God has for us, that's what's going to eradicate that fear. There's every single time I'm going to deliver a workshop, before I walk in, I've got a song that I play. And walking out, then you're going to kind of hear it on the playlist kind of going out, but it's by this artist named Judah. And it's simply a song. It's called I Am. And I just want to read a couple of the words to you guys. It opens, he says, stand firm in your faith and be courageous and strong. Don't stress, just breathe deep and know that I'm holding it all. And the first half of the verse is God just kind of speaking, saying, hey, this is just focus on me. Just focus on me. I know it's hard and all the chaos, but I want you to focus on me. And then there's a turn in the second half of the verse. And this is what he says. He says, when you speak to mountains, know that I'll move them. When your seas are raging, I'll walk you through them. When you're on the edge, just try and scream out my name. When you look at me, you'll be dancing on waters. And when you're in need, I'll provide like a father that would give everything just to have you by his side. I am who I am. I want you guys to hold on to those promises. Recognize where your fear is coming from and recognize that God is in control, and know which belief do you need to attach to your fears to drive it out. You pray with me? God, thank you for this. Thank you for your love. And God, thank you for the reminder that your love is there for us, that you are there for us, and that you don't want us just to deal. You don't want us just to try to control, but your love is there to drive out our fears. God, I ask that you would give us that reminder each day as we walk through this week, that we would show up different at work, that somebody would notice that, hey, there's something different about us. And it's the fact that we're latched onto your love as opposed to the fear. God, thank you for being who you are. In Christ Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for listening today. If you're in the Charlotte or Matthews, North Carolina area, you're always invited to catch us online or join us in person at one of our 2 service experiences, 9:30 and 11 a.m. in the Ridge Auditorium, or streaming live to our cafe venue. We hope to see you soon.